Greetings, friends. Let's get started. Fierce battles continue in the Zaporizhzhia direction, to the southeast, south, and southwest of Kurakhove. Both Russian and Ukrainian forces are deploying reserves into combat. Over the past day, Russian troops have reached the outskirts of Mala Tokmachka and begun fighting for belov. The Ukrainian armed forces are putting up desperate resistance. Meanwhile, on the southern Kurakhove front, just yesterday, Ukrainian military-affiliated channels boasted about stabilizing the situation south of the Vovcha River. However, they faced a new strike, and by evening, the tone of their updates shifted from confident and triumphant to fearful, and for good reason. The Russian army struck at Ruslan and achieved significant successes there. In one swift move, they overcame most of the 4-kilometer distance to the village, and today, Russian forces are less than 2 kilometers from its outskirts, preparing for an assault. The loss of Ruslan would present two major problems for the Ukrainian armed forces. The first is standard. The Russian forces would reach the Vovcha River. From their current position, it is only 6 kilometers to the last supply route for the Kurakhove area. If Russian troops reach the settlement of Bohatyr, and especially if they capture it, it would mean the operational encirclement of the Kurakhove grouping. The second problem involves the area around Velika Novosilka. The capture of Ruslan by Russian troops, followed by their advance to the Mokry Yali River, would cut off the main northern supply route for this grouping. Additionally, if Russian forces to the west manage to sever the road to Velika Novosilka, about 3 kilometers away and currently under heavy fire control, then the operational encirclement of this Ukrainian grouping would be complete. Russian units are also tightening the noose on the semi-encircled positions along the Suky Yali River. Ukrainian resources are already predicting a catastrophe here, noting that there is no longer a simple way for the 79th Brigade to retreat without heavy losses. The window of opportunity for that has passed. In the Selidov-Kurakhove direction, Russian forces continue pressuring the Ukrainian armed forces. Near Sontsevka, Russian troops have yet to break through Ukrainian resistance, but the unstoppable advance of the 114th Russian Brigade, formerly the 11th Regiment of the DPR Army, near Berezivka, has proven impossible for Ukrainian units to halt. Berezivka is now almost entirely under Russian control, and Russian forces are advancing towards Staryi Terny. Moreover, Ukrainian command is urgently redeploying its 33rd Brigade, which just yesterday was holding the line against Russian advances near Dalny, to confront the 114th Brigade, an indication of how critical the situation has become in this area. Additionally, the situation northward is worsening for the Ukrainian forces. Russian forces are gradually pushing Ukrainian units out of their positions north of the settlement of Zarya and are continuing their advance toward Pushkina and Ukrainka. To solidify their position here, Russian troops still need to secure their flanks, but in any case, a further push to the west seems inevitable. Meanwhile, in the Toretsk direction, Russian forces have made significant progress in the central part of the city. This gives the Russian army a chance to completely oust the Ukrainian armed forces from the area. If that happens, it will become very difficult for Ukrainian units to hold their positions, especially if Russian forces manage to capture the area around the central mine, where intense fighting is currently underway. At the same time, in the Chasiv Yar direction, even Ukrainian sources acknowledge the critical nature of their situation, stating that the collapse of defenses in the city is becoming a matter of the near future. This is largely due to recent Russian successes in the central part of Chasiv Yar, where fighters from the 200th Brigade and the 98th Division broke through Ukrainian defenses and entered the refractory plant, a key stronghold of the Ukrainian armed forces in the city. The loss of the plant and the surrounding high-rise residential area would make it impossible for Ukrainian forces to hold the remaining parts of the city. Ukrainian units would be forced to retreat from this critical point in northern Donbass toward Kostiantynivka, Druzhkivka, and Kramatorsk. It's also important to understand that today's warfare is heavily reliant on drones, and Chasiv Yar, as the highest point in northern Donbass, holds strategic significance similar to the heights near Horniak. Losing control over it would severely impact Ukrainian drone operations while enhancing the effectiveness of Russian UAV systems, which would undoubtedly influence future battles in this region. For their part, Russian forces continue to fight persistently, and are even attempting to expand their presence on the flanks in some areas. Nonetheless, Ukrainian counterattacks resumed this morning in the Zaporizhzhia district. It appears the Ukrainian armed forces are prepared to accept heavy losses to restore their positions here, and their reasoning is understandable. Losing Zaporizhzhia would have catastrophic consequences for the Ukrainian side. By the way, there is information that some reserves intended for the winter campaign have been partially redeployed to the Kupiansk area, signaling that difficult battles for the city are ahead. The Ukrainian army clearly does not intend to surrender the city. In the Kursk direction, there have been no significant changes over the past day. Russian forces continue clearing operations in the Olhivsky forest and adjacent tree lines, though progress is slow due to Ukrainian UAV activity. Fighting is also ongoing around Toretsk, but there have been no breakthroughs yet. Yesterday, a powerful FAB strike hit the Leonidivka area. The results are not yet clear, but breaking Ukrainian resistance here is critical for Russian forces for several reasons. Additionally, Ukrainian units are still holding positions in the farm areas in the southern part of Darino. Russian aviation and artillery are targeting them as battles continue in Martinivka and south of Sudja. As noted earlier, there are no significant changes. The fighting remains intense and grueling. Meanwhile, information from the Russian Foreign Ministry suggests uncertainty regarding US approval for Ukraine to use ATACMS missiles against Russia. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stated that Moscow has no confirmed information about a US decision to allow Kyiv to strike deep into Russian territory with long-range weapons. However, he noted that attacks using ATACMS missiles have already been recorded in the Bryansk region, raising serious concerns. Earlier reports from Ukrainian sources claimed the first strikes with US-supplied ATACMS missiles targeted a military facility in the Bryansk region, causing a fire. It was reported that 5 out of 6 missiles were intercepted by air defenses, but one reached its target, damaging a technical area. No casualties were recorded. Experts believe that the supply of long-range weaponry to Ukraine is part of the West's strategy to increase pressure on Russia. However, such actions could lead to unpredictable consequences, including more frequent use of precision weaponry by Russia in retaliation. It's worth noting that Russian President Vladimir Putin previously signed an updated nuclear doctrine, which states that the launch of ballistic missiles targeting Russian territory could justify retaliatory measures, including the use of nuclear weapons. The Russian Defense Ministry has confirmed that the Ukrainian armed forces launched 6 ATACMS missiles at a facility in the Bryansk region. According to the ministry, 5 were intercepted, while 1 partially damaged a technical area, causing a fire that was promptly extinguished. There were no casualties among military personnel or civilians. This incident is one of the first confirmed cases of Ukraine using ATACMS missiles to strike Russian territory. These actions became possible after US authorization for the use of such weapons in the conflict. It remains unclear whether this event will lead to further escalation. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov emphasized that Russia reserves the right to take all measures outlined in its doctrine in response to such threats. Experts note that the deployment of ATACMS significantly shifts the strategic balance. These missiles offer high precision and long-range capabilities, enabling Ukraine to target deeply located military facilities within Russia. The Bryansk attack exemplifies this capability, with the missiles striking a military target and causing a fire.